Hey there, stay tuned to find out just what a Thunder Bulge is. Hi, I'm Dennis Vandergenst. Join me in a series of entertaining and interesting conversations with entertaining and interesting people. We'll explore various aspects of the human experience and what makes life more fun. This is Uncommon Convos. Welcome to Uncommon Convos. I'm your host, Dennis Vandergenst, and before we get started today, I'd like to remind you to please subscribe to Uncommon Convos on your favorite podcast platform. It's quick and easy, and most importantly, it's absolutely free. You can also visit Uncommon Convos to check out the video version of this and all of our episodes. My guest today is Matt Garard, a very uncommon individual indeed, which makes him uniquely qualified to be here on our podcast today. Matt is an improvisational comedian, a comic actor, a stand-up comic. He's also known as Butter Thunder, a spotlighted dancer in Thunder Bulge, which is billed as the world's most electrifying comedy male review, kind of a comedic version of Magic Mike. He also happens to be my cousin. So, Matt, thanks for being here, man. How are you?
I'm great. What an intro.
Yeah, it's almost as if you wrote it yourself. But
right.
Well, parts of it, anyway. Yeah.
Oh, man.
It's kind of fun getting to interview my own cousin. And, of course, I know most of the answers to the questions I'm going to ask you, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't take you through the rigors of the process so that whoever's listening in gets a better idea of who Matt Garard is and what makes him an uncommon individual to be on this podcast. So, first question, and this is one that I actually I have a sense of the answer to, but I'm not sure I even know the answer. What is it? I guess when, how, and why did you get that bug to perform in the entertainment industry?
Oh, yeah. I started performing when I was a kid. I think I was always kind of an obnoxious child. In fact,
I'll confirm that.
I remember your mother intentionally giving me noisy Christmas presents to annoy my father. I think she gave me a harmonica at one point, which I thought I somehow knew how to play Bad to the Bone on. And I started acting when I was probably 6th, 7th grade. I had a music teacher. I went to Jordan Catholic grade school there in Rock Island, and my music teacher noticed that I was particularly loud, and she suggested that I take acting classes at her and her husband's acting school, which was a place called
Yeah. See, I figured that if she was your music teacher and she suggested you take acting classes, she was trying to tell you something else.
Oh, yes.
No, maybe music's not for you, but in any event.
Well, I did. I mean, I inevitably, as you grow up, I did do my fair share of musical theater. And definitely, I was a singer. I was in a Rock Island High School chamber choir. So that was pretty illustrious. They've got a pretty amazing choir program at Rocky. Dorothy McNamer, rest in peace. She was a wonderful choir teacher. But no, so I started pretty young doing plays. And then, as I went through high school, you do more, you end up doing musical theater, stuff like that. And, I just, I loved being on stage. It was an outlet for all of this, loud weirdness that comes out of me. And, that's kind of how I found it.
Well, and I know in the bio that you provided that you mentioned getting your first paying gig as an actor when you were 18 in the Ghostlight Theater in Davenport, Iowa. What was that? What was that? A musical? What was that? What was your role?
I auditioned for their summer season. And they were a new theater company at the time, but it was cool because they were paying everybody. They didn't last very long, but it was really cool. And my high school drama teacher was kind of involved, and he was like, "Hey, Matt, you should come out, check these auditions for the summer. You could do shows and make a little money." So I was like, "Okay, that's great." And so I auditioned. I ended up working on sets for their first two productions. I think they did Will Rogers Follies, and they did Gilligan's Island, the musical,
nice,
which was interesting. And then I was in their production of Noises Off, which Noises Off is what's the guy's name? Michael Frayn. It's the farce in 3 acts with the stage that rotates 360 degrees. So the entire second act is essentially pantomime while a play happens on stage on the other side. It's a really cool show. And actually, gosh, now that I'm thinking about it, I remember, oh man, I was helping build sets for it, and the company was they were using the theater at, I want to say, Davenport North High School, and there was some they wanted to do another weekend, and there was some kind of disagreement between the theater company and the school, and for whatever reason they wanted to do a third weekend because we'd sold out, and we ended up they got into an argument, and so we had to take this entire 2-story set and move it like on the fly from Davenport North High School, I think, to the Capitol Theater in downtown Davenport, and we had to throw it together in like a week, and it was insane. I remember the opening night, like the banister falling off the stage as this guy Jason Platt was hopping down it with his shoes tied together. The banister fell off the stage, and people thought it was part of the show because all this craziness is going on. But it's a cool show. Oh wow, I haven't thought about that in so long.
It's funny that you mentioned that show. I actually, ironically, was just talking to somebody this weekend, and he was mentioning that show, which I hadn't seen before. But the way you described it, other than the banister falling off the stage, was exactly how he described it. So,
okay.
Now you mentioned also in your bio that you had been offered a theater scholarship, which you turned down at the advice of your drama teacher. Why would a teacher tell you, don't take this free money or opportunity? What was the deal with that?
Well, first of all, it was a scholarship to community college, so I guess I should roll it back a little bit. No, the person who was in charge of the theater program at the place that offered me the scholarship apparently was a nightmare to work with. And my teacher, who knew me very well, who helped me, stay in school, because I definitely almost dropped out, and a lot of my friends did that, and I almost went down a very different path. And my choir teacher and my drama teacher really took an interest in me and helped me get to the point where I graduated and got my life going. So he had told me, Matt, you don't want to work with this guy. It's, he doesn't really know what he's doing, and this scholarship is essentially indentured servitude. Like, you're going to spend every night painting flats, and that's what you're going to do for the next 2 years, and you're just going to hate this guy. And so I was like, okay.
Gotcha.
And because I was so excited, I was like, remember when I was going to drop out, and now they're offering me a scholarship? Right. And he was like, don't do it. And I listened, and it was probably the best move I could have made at that point. Because then it pushed me in a different direction, because I was in school, I was taking all these theater classes, but I was one of maybe like 2 people that didn't take the theater scholarship when I got there. And so there was, but then I had found out from 2 people that had, graduated, that there was this theater club, and there was this, this account, there was a little bit of money, and if I could take it over and become the president of it, then I could use some budget and raise some money to just produce my own shows. And so that was the direction I ended up going in, and that was all because I didn't take that scholarship, which was awesome, because then I picked plays that I thought were cool, I put them up, I directed them, I produced them, we did everything, and we just got the experience of, I had taken acting classes, as a kid, blah, 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 but, really got the experience of building shows from the ground up on my own, and it was just like sink or swim. I held my feet to the fire and did it. It was cool.
Yeah, and then we're going to kind of circle back to that near the end of the interview, because I know it probably played an important role in what you're doing nowadays and where you'd like to see things go, as far as the production end of entertainment. But before we get to that, you've gone kind of a circuitous route to get to where you're at now, including the next thing that I wanted to discuss was, I guess, eventually auditioning for comedy sports. Now, I think a lot of folks are familiar with comedy sports, but there may be people out there who aren't. So in general, what is Comedy Sports? What is that all about?
Sure. Comedy Sports it's a really, really amazing thing. They're a franchise. When I was involved in it, I think they were in 24 cities in the U.S. and then they were also in Manchester, England, and I think there's one that opened up in Germany. I don't know how many cities they're at now, but yeah, it's really cool. It's a train. They do short form improv. It's all family friendly. It's a really, really cool place. And you know, especially the Comedy Sports in the Quad Cities, it's no longer, it exists in a slightly different incarnation, but it no longer exists there. And at the time, though, it was such a cool part of the community and the District of Rock Island, and you know, yeah.
No, and I know when you first auditioned, you didn't make the team, as it were, kind of like Michael Jordan not making his varsity team in high school, the first effort. But then eventually you did. But before you did that, before you actually made the cast, you had also performed with It's a Mystery, which is another franchise, isn't it? Or is it? No,
they're not a franchise. That's actually It's a Mystery is a really cool guy. He another local guy in I guess Scott's in Davenport, but Scott Nauman, that's his murder mystery company. Yes, yeah, you know Scott. Scott's an awesome guy, Scott and Shelley, and they ran that for years. And yeah, I started that. I think I started doing that when I was about 19, 20, doing those shows. And that was, you know, I was always so fortunate to be able to get paid to act, you know, and they were such a cool company. And, you know, you'd do these murder mystery shows. They were probably like 70% scripted. And then the other 30%, you know, was improv with the audience, and with one another. But, yeah, what a fun, and I mean, It's a Mystery still exists, and Scott Nauman still does great shows. He writes everything himself. I mean, you know, I know people help within the cast. I'm sorry, I know there are other, but, you know, but it's all locally produced. It's all original content. It's a really, really cool company. It's a really cool thing that the Quad Cities, still has. And, but yeah, it was great. It really got me in that mode of doing improv, because so much of that show, you're just walking around in a room with people, you know, and you have to interact. You mingle in character, and that kind of improv is really good. And having that before going into Comedy Sports and then going into further improv training, I really feel like the experience that I got at It's a Mystery really gave me a tool belt to move forward, and the skill set that I needed to continue with what I wanted to do.
Yeah, and I know Scott and Shelley very well. In fact, I should probably have them on the podcast as well.
Yeah.
But I think the reason I assumed it was a franchise is because it was so reminiscent. The template, I guess, of the show is reminiscent of Tony and Tina's wedding, for instance. If you've seen that, or folks out there.
I'm familiar with Tony and Tina's.
Sure. Where you're in character and you're milling about, and you know, there's some goal in mind, you know, for each of the shows as far as It's a Mystery. But so you went from It's a Mystery, you did get cast in Comedy Sports, and you helped them actually reach the pinnacle of the World Comedy Championship. Well, that's something, because as you said, there were 24, 25, whatever teams around the country at that time. So kind of cool.
That's one cool thing that Comedy Sports does. They do a big tournament every summer, and then so players from all different cities come in, and we were hosting it in the Quad Cities that year. And
thus you won, but
yeah, it's strange. It's a weird thing in comedy that if you host a comedy tournament, the team from the home city ends up in the championship. I don't know how that works, but I know that we worked very hard to get there.
Yes. Well, and again, for those of you who have not seen a performance of a Comedy Sports anywhere, as Matt mentioned, it is very family friendly, and they take suggestions from the audience throughout as they play games. They're they're teamed up basically, and they have to take these suggestions and incorporate them into the performance. And then I don't know exactly how the scoring works, but eventually it's
based
obviously
on laughter. It's very scientific.
Exactly, it's very, very scientific, very subjective. But no, it's a fun thing to do if you have the opportunity to see comedy sports in your neck of the woods. I'd certainly suggest you do that. So you mentioned comedy sports, and it's a murder or it's a mystery, both giving you some real sound background and I guess practice to do improv going forward. How often, for instance, with comedy sports, were you performing? Was that a weekly thing, or numerous times a week?
So at the time they would run 8 shows a month, and then it would kind of be based on everybody's availability. And then if you wanted to play more, you hung out around the theater, and if somebody couldn't play one night, you were there like with your uniform ready to go. But I was playing. Almost every weekend, depending on scheduling and what I was doing, because I was also, directing my own shows, and I was also, being involved in the local theater scene, which in the Quad Cities, as you know, is quite vibrant. So there's a lot of stuff going on. But and then it was cool for me because I quickly got to the point where I was getting requested to do shows, and you're getting paid, and not that it's a ton of money, but when you're 20 years old and you start doing improv and you're immediately being given more shows than some people who've been doing it longer, it feels cool,
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Well, no. Well, speaking of, shows and being 20 some years old at the time and getting started in a very competitive business, in a fairly competitive market. And then, you went on to Chicago, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but you also did some stand up. Now, tell me, what the difference is as far as your mindset between doing improv, which at least as far as I've seen, it's always an ensemble effort with the improv, somebody to bounce things off of,
There are
etc.
people that claim to be able to do one-person improv shows.
I don't know, but good for that. But obviously, if you're doing stand-up, though, you're out there on your own. I got to imagine that's pretty scary. What's the buzz you get? What's the fears you have? What's your preference between improv and stand-up?
Sure. Yes, and you're right. It's an entirely different animal. Being on stage by yourself versus being on stage with an ensemble, it's a night and day difference. Like, I've gotten to a point, with improv where I'm pretty fearless. And I was able to to condition myself that way pretty early on, and in any aspect of performance. But in stand-up, you're just there with your jokes, and it's far more personal. And I think if you're doing it right, there should be a level of vulnerability there that you really don't have with improv. In an improv show, I can cut to the next thing. Somebody can come save me, but if I bare my soul to you and I think it's funny and you don't, well, then I'm just stuck here on stage. Like, there's nothing I can do. All I can do is move on to the next thing that I wrote that I clearly, misjudged you at the first. So it's definitely different. But it's still a cool buzz. I fell out of doing stand-up. I still love to do it and would love to do more of it. But when I started, touring full time with improv, it's just where my schedule filled up, and
Sure.
After you've been on the road for 3 weeks doing shows, like, you don't want to come home and go to an open mic. You want to look at the wall in your bedroom and not see the people you've been in a van with for 3 weeks. But it's such a different animal. But I love it. But it's a night and day difference, I think.
Well, and I've, I think there are probably a lot of folks who have been to open mics And there's nothing more awkward as an audience member, and I'm sure as the performer, than having someone just bomb one after another.
Right.
Failed joke that you can hear the crickets, and that's got to be very unnerving, doing stand up and not having that that teammate who's going to come and save you with the ensemble that you have with the improv.
For sure. And imagine being that guy with those jokes, and then you have to return to that same room the next week at the same time because that's what your schedule allows. And you have to do all those same jokes again and try to figure out how to make them not suck in front of the same people who saw you suck the week before and the week before. It's a very masochistic thing, stand-up comedy.
Well, and then, how do you learn that, whether it's stand-up or improv, how do you get used to it, and how do you handle the occasional heckler? And some, of course, since there's a lot of drinking going on in some of these clubs, some of these hecklers are, well, first of all, some of them are funnier than the comedians as far as the things they say. But
it's a very heckler thing to say, Dennis.
But they can obviously be brutal, too. So how do you learn to deal with that?
It's an interesting question too, because that again, I think there's a big difference in dealing with that person in a stand-up set versus an improv show.
Sure.
When you're doing a stand-up, the stakes are a lot higher in a stand-up. Because if somebody interrupts you before you're about to hit a punchline, now your timing's screwed up. Now your set looks bad. You have to stop and deal with this person. There are certain points where you could stop and deal with this person, and certain points where you can't. But in an improv show, it's very easy to dismiss them, to make them look stupid, because I can just, because it's all made up, and they know I'm making it up as I go along. So boop, boop, boop. I can step out and do anything. But I think that really is, the best way to do. I try to shoot them down and make them look dumb. Now, that being said, I also think that there's a difference between heckling and unconsciously participating,
Sure.
Like I've seen people where somebody would ask a question and somebody instinctively would just answer the question because they're drunk and they're in the audience, and I've seen people lose their mind, like, how dare you? And it's not like it's like, okay, chill, one
do I bother
example.
you at your job at McDonald's? That kind of response.
That kind of thing. God, yeah. I saw Chris D'Elia do that at the Comedy Store and just looked like an asshole.
Yeah.
And that's fine. A great example of it when I was house staff at Second City in Chicago, and I remember Brian Posehn came in, and Second City, they're used to sketch show. This was at Up, which is a stand-up club that they opened when I was working there. And so they had their sketch shows, and, in the sketch shows, it's very much a show. Like, if you talk, you're done. Like, you're getting warned maybe twice, and then you're booted. And that's if you say a word. Whereas the stand-up vibe, it's a different crowd. And I remember Brian Posehn came in, and he's performing, and Brian Posehn talks a lot about the band Slayer. And if you've ever met a Slayer fan, they're fun, but like if you say Slayer, they say Slayer. Like that's what they do. And so he talks about heavy metal a lot, and there were all these metalheads in there, and every time he'd say Slayer, they're throwing up their heavy metal horns and yelling Slayer, and they wanted us to kick all these people out. And finally I'm like, no, they're not heckling. Like, this manager just doesn't understand this because they're not a show person.
Right.
I'm like, these people aren't heckling, and they're like, well, he was very specific. And then after the first show, we're cleaning tables, and they're apologizing to him. They're like, I'm so sorry, those people kept yelling Slayer. And he's like, oh, no, I expect that. I'm a metalhead. This is what we do. No. Right. Yeah, let that happen. Just don't let any actual heckling happen. So I think, I think you have to evaluate how you deal with it.
Yeah. Well, so, and I want to get back to Chicago, but before we do that,
all over the place. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. You have
this linear structure. I'm not used to it.
As an attorney, that's what I do. I walk you through in a certain fashion. So before we lose our goals and our sights and our parameters too much, I wanted to revisit the Davenport Junior Theater, because I know you taught there while you were doing some of these other things in the Quad Cities. And I actually, I happen to be familiar with the junior theater a little bit. What was it that you did there? I mean, you're teaching kids, right? Were you teaching them acting, comedy, all the above, none of the above? How'd that work?
All of the above at the time. I remember I was in a show. There was a theater company that was using the same theater. Gosh, what were they called? New Ground Theater. I was doing, and they used the same theater, and it was another one of these small local theater companies that was paying, and so I was like, awesome, like I'm 20 years old and getting paid to act. This is so cool. So I was in a show over there, and the junior theater kids would kind of wander in, and I was like, man, I'd really like to get involved with that. So I just started playing improv games with some of the students that were wandering in, and then eventually they're like, oh, you know all these improv games, you're a comedy sports guy, why don't you teach here? And so I was like, oh, great, that's what I wanted. So I taught over there, and that was, I taught acting, basic plays, and then I would teach improv. And then, we would do these classes where I would essentially use improv to create original plays with all these kids. And so, we would have these huge brainstorming sessions, and it was so awesome. Like the things that come out of children, just, completely uninhibited, like, you can just pull gold. And so we would create our own plays, and, that were all based on the ideas that they had. So, these kids could come in, and we'd, at the end of the class, after we wrote it, we'd perform it, and then they would have their play that they wrote, and the one time that their idea came to life. And it was this really, really cool thing. And, it's such a great program over there, I think, acting helped me stay on the right path, or at least the path I wanted to be in life. And, had someone not introduced me to it at a young age in a setting like that, I don't know that I would have had it. So I feel very fortunate and very blessed.
If that hadn't happened to you, you wouldn't have those lovely shoes, that we can see in your background there. You'd probably be barefoot and pregnant somewhere.
There's a lot of Adidas shoes over there. But yeah, barefoot. I mean, and I do still look pregnant.
So now I do want to talk a bit about Chicago, because that seems to be where things really took off. You started off with Chicago I.O., which you informed me before we got started here, used to be Improv Olympics, but they had to stop using the Olympic term.
Yes, they were sued.
Yes, they were sued.
Yeah, I mean, that must be...
Damn lawyers.
Right, damn lawyers. It was confusing people. I assumed people were wandering into their bar on Clark Street and thinking they were going to watch some sort of Olympic competition, and then all of a sudden it's a bunch of overweight white dudes going whoosh. No, no.
Where's the 100-meter dash? I don't know what we're doing here.
Right. I came here to see shot put. But no, so they eventually went down to I.O., but I.O. is a cool place. I wanted to learn about long form improv. So that's one of the things. So comedy sports is short form improv. It's all game based. Everything you're doing is 2 to 3 minutes, and you rely on the gimmicks of these games. It's like Whose Line Is It Anyway? That's short form improv. Whereas at I.O., I could learn about long form improv. And long form improv, you get a group of anywhere from 2 to 8 or so people. I mean, you go bigger, but, and you take a suggestion from the audience and you do a totally improvised piece, usually between 20 and 30 minutes, as an ensemble based on that one word suggestion. And so their take on it. So Del Close is the guy who started I.O., and, his creation that created, gave birth to long form improv is a form called the Herald. And so that's the original long form improv form that you learn, and that's the basis for everything they do at I.O.
Now, it would seem to me that could either be great or horrendous. If you're doing the short-term stuff, you're just moving it along. If it sucked, you've got another gig or another set coming up. With the long form, though, if you're committed to 25 minutes, half hour, or whatever, and it's slow, it's got to be really painful. Again, on stage or off stage, I would imagine.
I agree. There's some people that subscribe to the school of thought that there's no such thing is a bad improv show. I don't subscribe to that school of thought.
Right.
You know, I always say there's a reason that you can get paid to do short form and you can't get paid to do long form. And that really is true, you know, and that's one of the things that you kind of learn as you go through these different improv schools and stuff like that. And a lot of stuff has changed in the past few years. There's a lot of upheaval, but, you know, it really is, you don't get paid to perform. You don't, I don't know. It's weird. I don't want to.
No, that's all right. Now, I'm not sure if I've got the timeline right here, or I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but were you at the same time, were you going through the training at the Second City Conservatory?
No, I did them separately. When I started taking classes at IO, I really want, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to rag on long form improv. Wait, long form improv is great, and the tools you learn in long form improv can make you an amazing performer, and they really give you the tools to do what you want to do. Sorry, I didn't mean to, but no. When I started taking IO classes, I still lived in the Quad Cities. I wanted to learn about long form. There was nowhere to do it locally. So I would drive 3 hours to Chicago, take a 3-hour improv class, try to catch a couple shows, and then drive 3 hours home. And then I'd try to drive up at least once or twice a week to see different shows, different nights of the week, just so I wasn't constantly watching the same groups. I did that. For a few months. And then, you know, when you're in your level 1 long form improv class, inevitably you have that conversation like, what do you want to do with this? What do you want to do? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, if I could do improv in Chicago a couple nights a week and say I did Chicago improv, that'd be pretty cool. And so then somebody was like, well, why don't you move to Chicago? And I was like, that's a good idea.
That makes some sense.
So I did that. So I moved to Chicago. I think I must have been in like level 2 or 3 at IO. I don't know how they've changed their levels. They restructure the classes and stuff, but yeah. And then, you know, from there, you really get, at the time in Chicago, and I think it's kind of lessened, but you know, at that time, so what, I would have been about, when I moved up, I think I was 22. So what year would that have been?
Last year.
Yeah, when I was 22 last year. So, you know, 13 years ago, there was this super vibrant improv scene going on in Chicago, you know, and 7 nights a week, if you weren't at one of the major theaters, you could be at one of, you know, more bars than you could count, and there'd be an improv show going on of some sort. And, you know, there still is a very vibrant stand-up scene and improv scene there. But, like, you know, it was a cool scene to be involved in at a cool time, because there was just so much of it. And, you know, you were seeing people like, you know, I remember people like Katie Rich and Cecily Strong and things like that, like people running around the scene, and then watching those people get elevated to, you know, SNL status, and you know, and you're like, wow, that's a real, and like, you know, those people are obviously performing on the main stage at Second City and things like that, but like, that's a real person that, you know, you could have very easily had a beer with at the Old Town Ale House last weekend and chatted with, and, you know, watching them elevate, which really, you know, made this idea of, you know, comedy in whatever its form and it being a way to make a living, you know, feel attainable and real, because it's there, you know.
Well, then how? What was it? What was
Why didn't I make it? Is that what you were going to ask?
No. Because hey, you're still making it. But,
right.
So what was your connection to Second City? How did that develop?
Oh yeah,
training and/or performing at Second City. What was it you were doing there?
Yeah, I did. I started off. I went through their conservatory program. So for their conservatory program, you audition in, and then you go through a few levels, and then after you go through a few levels, you have to re-audition, and they make cuts. So I went through that program, and that program it's about a year long. And you have different teachers. I was fortunate enough to have some really, really amazing teachers. at Second City and at IO, honestly, people like Rachel Mason, TJ Jagodowski, which if you're an improv person, TJ and Dave are like the holy grail of improv. So went through the conservatory program, and in the conservatory program, Michael Gelman, who's been there since the beginning, he does his day one boot camp with you, where he explains to you that most of you will never be on stage at Second City. They're not training people to work there. What their goal in the conservatory is to give you the tools to create a Second City style review. Once you have the tools to create a Second City style review, then those tools should help you find work. And if you're going to work at the Second City, take these tools and call us in 10 years.
Gotcha.
But that being said, I loved that program so much because of that. Like going through the program at IO, there's really this dangling carrot of like, am I going to get on a Herald team? Am I going to get on a Herald team? Blah, blah, blah. And, the week we did our Herald team stuff, my dad died. And so I was a little divided. My attention was a little divided that week. And there's this dangling carrot. And so toward the end of the program, these people that I'd gone through it with, I've made some amazing friends that are still lifelong friends there. But so many of these people that, were cool and you'd hang out at the bar with got very competitive and very catty. And you really just saw some of the ugliness in some of these people, come out because there was this thing they wanted and it got very cutthroat. At Second City, you didn't have to deal with any of that because they laid it all out the first day. Like, you're probably not good enough to do this. So let's see how good we can make you. And that really allowed me to go into that full force.
Okay. So you took the tools, though. You took the training that they gave you, and you latched on to something called Mission Improvable. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So tell us about that. How did Mission Improvable differ, for instance, from Comedy Sports and from the long form improv at IO Chicago and what you learned at Second City? How was it alike? How was it different?
Yeah, well, so Mission Improvable is a touring improv company, and so it was interesting. It was it had been, I want to say 6 months probably since my dad died a year to the day from me moving to Chicago, and so it must have been, I want to say 6-7 months later. I had kind of been in a slump, as you do when you're 23 and a parent dies. Not that it's the hardest thing in the world. There are people whose struggles are far, far worse, but that's what I was doing at the time. And so I fell into a slump, and I was partying and drinking far too much. I remember I had heard of Mission Improvable, and they had an audition, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna get my drunk ass out of bed, and I'm gonna go to this audition. I haven't done anything to work toward my goals in 6 months. Part of my dad, when he was dying, he really wanted me to get to Chicago to pursue what I wanted to pursue. I remember he had been in a coma for 2 weeks. And he came out of the coma, and 2 weeks later, he was marching around in the winter, in Chicago, helping me look for apartments because he was like, "This is what you want to do. This is what you're supposed to do. This is what you love. We're gonna make it happen." But so I had, I'd been in this slump, and I hadn't done anything to work towards my goals, and I was like, if I just go to this audition, I can just say that I did something, Right. And so I went. And it was funny. I used to do a stupid thing in auditions where I'd never had headshots. I was up for whatever reason. I was too broke or lazy or combination of the two to get professional headshots done. So I would go into auditions and I would come up with the craziest story as to why I didn't have my headshots, ex-girlfriends, fires, whatever I could come up with. And this is weird, but I'm going to bare my soul to you, Denny. But no, whatever I would come up with, I would go in, and if they bought my bullshit, then I'd be like, cool, now I've got a one-up on these people. And I felt like I had the upper hand. Super weird. So I went to this audition. I did that. I got in. Everybody's in their audition clothing. I remember, their ties, and I was wearing, when I lived in the Quad Cities, I had worked at a haunted house, called Terror in the Woods, Mike and Penny Steen, also amazing people. I had a t-shirt from there, and it had like a zombie, holding a heart, and I was wearing jorts, and I think maybe even a chain wallet. And that's how I wandered into this audition with no headshot, and I just didn't care. And I had probably the best audition of my life, and I got cast part-time, which was interesting. I was also I remember in that room I auditioned with my friend Keith Happersberger, who does the Try Guys on BuzzFeed now. He's very famous. Actually, I think they took Keith full time, and then but I went part time. Obviously, you show up like that, but it was really cool. And then they started calling me for touring shows. They work the college market primarily, and so they start calling me for these touring college shows. And again, I'd fallen into this thing where I was getting paid to perform again. When I remember going to Chicago too and talking to my improv friends about all the opportunities I had living in the Quad Cities to get paid to perform, and they're like, "You can get paid to perform?"
Let's go to the Quad Cities.
Yeah, right. Just live there. So I started touring with them part time. They were also doing a show at Fizz, which was a bar in Chicago at the time. I don't know if it's still there, but. So I started working with them, and it's short form improv, but it was cool because you didn't have to play clean, but the strengths that I gained playing clean for so long with comedy sports, I think, made me a stronger performer than a lot of these people who had to go blue. But no, it was a really cool experience. So I started working with them, and then they have a full time touring company who that was a goal. And so eventually they hired me to go full time. And so I went full time with them for 4 years. And that show you would be at a new college. You're basically on the road with the college school year. So 8 months of the year, you're out on the road. You're in a van with 3 other people, new city every night, new hotel every night, and you do anywhere between like 15 and 25 shows a month, just kind of depending on how busy it was. And we had the Mission Improvable show that we did. And then eventually, the company created Shot of Reality, which is an alcohol awareness program designed for colleges, that implements elements of comedy and improv. It's a great program.
Sure.
And so they started feeding us that show to do. So, we drive around, do improv shows, and live in hotels, and do alcohol awareness shows. And I mean, it was the greatest.
As you're drunk half the time, but
I can't speak to any level of intoxication. No, we drank responsibly, which is what we encouraged in the show. Responsible drinking, know your limits, take care of one another, make sure that everyone gets home safe.
Perfect.
But that's also the best part about the hotel lobby. You're already home.
That's right. That's right. Now you did the part-time gig there for 3 years and 4 years full-time, and obviously doing a lot of performances during the school year. The performances, whether it was this drinking advisement type of promotion, or the edutainment,
yes.
or the other Mission Improvable type of format, whatever you were doing there, was it sponsored by the school? Was it actually on the college campus, or was it something that you get booked at like the local pub? College. How did that work?
Oh, my frat would love to have you guys. No. There's an entire industry built up around college entertainment.
Sure.
So Mission Improvable is actually with a booking agency called Bass Schuler Entertainment. They're one of the biggest in the business, and they have, they have everything. They're their improv group, but they represent stand-up comedians, musicians, magicians, hypnotists, chainsaw jugglers, just about any kind of entertainment, inflatables. And so all of that stuff comes through NACA, which is the National Association of Campus Activities. And so they have these giant conferences. They have 7, well, it's changed a little bit this year, but they have, traditionally they have 7 conferences and a big national conference every year. Mm-hmm. And there's an episode of Crashing about it. If you ever watch the show Crashing, and they do a pretty good job, but it's, and so, they have these giant conferences regionally and nationally, and college students come and they shop for entertainment. They watch showcases throughout the weekend, and then they have, it's trade show style booths where you come and you interact with students, and you try to get yourself booked. And so that's how. And so it's all through the schools. They're budgeted for this. Campus activities is a big thing. There are people that work in campus activities as adults for their full-time job, and that's what they do. They bring entertainment to these schools.
So, and after you've done this tour of duty, which had to have been both grueling but exciting, I would imagine, you moved to LA, which of course seems to be the place to be if you want to succeed in the entertainment industry, and you end up working back for Mission Improvable as a tour manager. Now, was that like surrendering your goal? Now you're kind of behind the scenes, or did you just adjust your goals and decide, this might be a different means to a different end?
Oh, not really. I mean, I moved out here, because I just wanted to pursue more. I didn't know exactly what more meant, excuse me. I didn't know what more was going to be, but I was like, look, I've had, everything I've done in my life, every step has kind of led me to the next thing. And so, and I'm very fortunate and blessed that way, because I think a lot of people look and they don't find things they want. And for whatever reason, everything just kind of leads to the next thing, or has for me in my life with regard to this stuff. So I was like, I'm going to go out there and just see what happens. I was working in an office as a ticket broker, which is how I supported myself in Chicago. My dad did that. That's an entire other episode.
Sure.
That world. And so I was working in an office for 6 months, and then the tour manager position came up, and it happened at a time, I wanted to go home for Christmas, and they're like, we work every Christmas. And I'm like, well, this isn't enough money for that. And so, I got offered that position, and no, it was cool. I learned so much, you do routing and you do organization, and, at that time, the company had 5 different shows. And so, organizing 20 to 30 people that are on the road at any given time, and that's with the full-time tour co. Working on all the logistics, it's a constant, problem-solving game, which I thought was awesome, it was another opportunity for me to gain more industry experience, more tools, and just more knowledge of, how things worked, as opposed to just showing up, doing the show,
Right.
And so, that it was really good. It was great. Now, was it time consuming? Yes. Did it maybe distract me from some of the TV and film things I'd like to pursue? Yes. But ultimately, again, I feel like it was just the next chapter for me, and then led me to the next thing.
Well, and speaking of next chapters, let's talk a little bit about Thunder Bulge. Because at what point in time did that come along, and I guess more importantly, why? Why did it? Explain to the folks who are listening and or watching. Yeah, and by the way, I'm going to have Justin, our producer, insert your promo video for Thunder Bulge at this point in the podcast. So
good.
As we're before he does that, give us kind of the short version of what Thunder Bulge is.
Sure.
And what it's designed to accomplish.
Thunder Bulge is the world's most electrifying comedy male review. You said it fairly well earlier. Essentially, we are the comedy version of Magic Mike. I'm there strictly for body positivity. The other guys are ripped. We do. It's a comedy male strip show. We use improv. We have fully choreographed dance numbers, audience contests. It's an incredibly interactive show. Bachelorette parties love it. Bachelor parties love it. We celebrate fun. We celebrate sexiness. We celebrate inclusivity. We make our audience members feel special and beautiful. And that's what we do.
And this is right where Justin is going to insert that video.
The following is an announcement from the National Sexy Service. There's a 100% chance of Thunder Bulge in your area. These seductive comedians descend from the heavens to bring you an interactive comedy experience like no other. Hot, sexy dance numbers, bootylicious choreography, wild audience contests, rock hard comedy, and of course, whipped cream. Thunder Bulge creates a fun and safe environment. We don't care how you identify. We bring the sexy to everyone. Wild enough for your bachelorette party, but naughty enough for grandma. Seriously, grandmas love us. Get ready to make it rain and let Thunder Bulge bring the storm to your next birthday. Girls' night out, boys' night out, or if you're just looking for a sexy good time, oh yeah. Follow the storm at Rock Hard Comedy. For booking and show info, visit thunderbulge.com.
So now we've heard the promo, and if you get the chance, if you haven't seen the promo, you're going to want to check out uncommonconvos.com so you can actually get the visual here that goes with this, because you're losing a lot if you don't get the visual. But
the visual is something.
Or go to what is it? Thunderbulge.com.
Yeah. You can also follow us on all of the social media at Rock Hard Comedy.
There you go.
Yeah.
So whose idea was that, and how did that all come about?
Thunder Bulge is the brainchild of my best friend Dave Sill. Dave Sill and I toured together for Mission Improvable, so we lived in a van together. And
down by the river.
Down by the river. Yep. Yeah. In a van down by the river. Performed in almost every state together. And Dave used to work in Chicago. When we were on tour during the summers, Dave worked at this place called the Kit Kat Club. And the Kit Kat Club would do drag shows. It's a very big bachelorette party destination. And Dave was a busboy. And he had big dreams. He wanted to work his way up to shot boy. And we were like, Dave, you're gonna really have to work on your abs. Yeah. And I remember making the stupid commitment that if Dave ever made it to Shop Boy, that we would come down and do body shots off of him. One day, Dave calls me up during Pride and says, "Matt, you're never gonna believe it. They promoted me to Shot Boy today. You better get down here and do a body shot off of me." And so, like a good friend, I did. And then Dave, had this idea. He wanted to bring that party to a comedy show. Magic Mike had kind of come out. The stage show wasn't there yet, but there seemed to be this. There are male strip shows that exist, and I think they tend to be. I'm sure people have fun, but they're aggressive. And it's not. It's not a party, it's not fun,
Sure.
So if we can bring a comedic element to it, we've got something totally different. And so, that was Dave's dream and Dave's vision. And then, out here in LA, started putting it together. And so, he went shopping around for ripped comedians, which is an interesting thing. Like, hey man, I see you're really fit. Would you like to be in my show? I like what you got going on here, man.
Why are you watching? Yeah. Well, you guys actually went on the Gong Show with this entertaining effort.
We did.
And to your credit, you didn't get gonged. You didn't win, but you didn't get gonged. How did that happen? How you get? Do you have to audition? Did somebody see you and say, "Hey, listen, we want you on this," or how'd that work?
The Gong Show, the Gong Show was super fun. Honestly, it's such a weird thing. Sadly, it's no longer going to be filming. But they got a solid 2 seasons.
Wasn't your fault.
It wasn't our fault. But no, we saw that they were having auditions, and they just look for weird stuff, and we're like, there's nothing like what we do out there, and so we're like, all right, let's see what we can do. And we have these 80s outfits that have these little purple booty shorts and leg warmers and wristbands, kind of workout thing. And we have this 80s choreography, pump up I don't even know what to describe it as, that we do. And so we're like, all right, let's just go see what happens. It's a TV show, and worst case scenario, they tell us no. Best case scenario, we get to do something on TV with our group, with the show that we created.
Right.
And so, yeah, and this was probably about a year after creating it. And, we've been performing at the West Side Comedy Theater in Santa Monica regularly, and they're an awesome place. That's Mission Improbable's theater. The guys who own Mission Improvable started that theater.
Gotcha.
But we hadn't done any TV stuff with it yet or anything like that. And so, yeah, we went in, we auditioned, and man, the auditions for the Gong Show are weird. And it's just the weirdest people. I don't fully understand.
Right in.
Yeah, right. So we went in, we did our choreography, we ripped our shirts in half. And they loved it, and they were super cool with us. So then we kind of got with their producers and wrote a bit, So we had to go back and we had to once they started talking to us, they were like, okay, let's figure out what you're going to do on the show. And so we had to come up with a funny bit and then film it and go back and forth with them to decide what they liked, they didn't like, and then eventually, we agreed on this thing with me eating a sandwich, which is a thing we like to do. Fat guy with a sandwich and booty shorts is always fun. And so we went on, and it was very cool. We got to be on stage with Mike Myers. He's in
wait a second. Yeah, I was going to say, no, that wasn't Mike Myers. Nobody knows that was Mike Myers.
Wow, what's his name? Tony Maitland. No, what do they call him?
Whatever
Tony
it was.
Maitland or something like that. Yeah, it was a weird character bit. I don't know. It was interesting too, because when we filmed it, we did 3 run-throughs of the show, and so we did like a dry run. With where we just hit our marks, and then we ran through it once with Mike Myers, and he was just no makeup, like as Mike Myers, and so I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then he came back as the character in the makeup. It was super weird, but it was kind of cool.
Little freaky.
He was very professional. I imagine he's been there for weeks with. The Gong Show tries to get the strangest things they can find. And I think they intentionally try to find things to mess with the judges. So I can't imagine the number of weird people that he dealt with throughout the course of filming that entire season. But he was super cool to us.
Well, and I don't want to. I don't want to race through this, but there's some other things I wanted to talk about with the Thunder Bulge, for instance. Didn't you have some kind of inquiry from AGT?
Yes.
And what was the bridal convention story I wanted to hear about? So tell us about these two issues.
Sure. AGT. Yeah. After we were on Gong Show, a producer from America's Got Talent reached out to us, and they were like, come in and audition. We think you could be good for this. And so we're like, okay, cool. So we went to, I think it was in like Pasadena at the convention center. So we go to the auditions, and when they call you in, they give you a piece of paper so that you don't have to wait in the giant line outside the building. But you show up, show ready. So we show up, we're in our breakaway pants and booty shorts underneath, and we've got vests on with no shirts, bow ties, and we've got some props because they wanted us to try to do some, you audition to potentially do some bits with the judges as well, which they like. And so we had this bit that we were like, okay, we could pull Terry Crews and do this. And so we had some props, but we show up and this place is packed, and you have no idea how many children audition for America's Got Talent. And when you show up in coconut oil, shirtless, to a room full of children who are just there to dance, you feel a certain kind of way. It's a strange feeling.
Feel kind of dirty, don't you?
Yeah. But yeah, so ultimately, they wanted, they were gonna put us on, but they didn't want us to do any Thunder Bulge stuff, and so they, when we were on Gong Show, they bought the rights to the Pointer Sisters for us and worked with us on a bit. They let us on a few times. They're like, well, if you come down, they're like, okay, you're in. Come down next week, you might get on. And we're like, well, we're not going to come spend 8 hours if you're maybe going to put us on. The next week, they're like, okay, you'll definitely get in front of the judges. And we're like, okay. And they're like, but what we need you to do is cut your judge bit, change all of your music, and change all of the choreography. And we're like, and they essentially, and they also, the one producer is so funny. I remember talking with her, and she's trying to be nice. She's like, yeah, we like it. You're funny. Just when you come, could you make sure that I don't know how to say this, that the big guy, the bigger gentleman is front and center. And I'm like, oh, you mean the tall guy?
Me.
But yeah, so they wanted us to change everything, and it just essentially what they wanted us to do was to come out and get X'd to be bad strippers.
Sure, of course.
That's not really representative of what we do. Like we have
Sure.
a full show that people love, and that's what we'd like to showcase. They were super cool. But yeah.
So tell me then, of course you decide to back off that, but somebody decided to back off you, apparently, at this bridal convention. What was that all about?
That was so stupid. So we were doing, normally we're performing Santa Monica, and we had booked a show at a room at Flappers Comedy Club in Burbank, which is an awesome room. Barb Holiday, I love you. So we normally perform in West LA, and we're performing in the Valley, and West LA people don't come to the Valley, and so no, and so we were nervous, and we're like, well, how can we get people to come? And so there was this bridal convention going on, and we're like, well, bachelorettes love our show. Let's just go to this bridal convention and see what happens. And so we showed up, and same way with our no shirts on but vests and bow ties. I
Oiled up, ready to go.
Yeah, I lied to the person at the ticket booth and told them we were DJs and we were working, and they gave us all wristbands. And so then we're like, okay, I guess we're just gonna walk around this convention and talk to people and try to flyer them. And oh god, it's so stupid. And so we ended up making friends with some DJs who let us kind of dance in their booth and hang out, and it was going really well. And then Dave had another gig. Dave shows up late, and Dave had made these stickers. And these stickers, they said Thunder Bulge, they had a lightning bolt. They might have looked a bit phallic.
Maybe.
And so
is Dave the one? Is that Sugar Nipples or Sugar
Baby
Nips?
Baby Nips. Yes.
Oh, Baby Nips.
Yes,
Okay, yes.
Butter Thunder, Dave's Baby Nips. We also have 2x4, Riptide, Rooster, DJ Brittany.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So
and our guitarist G-String.
So Baby Nips brought the phallic looking.
Baby Nips. Yeah. Baby Nips brought the dong stickers, and he starts handing them out. And the thing about Dave is people love Dave. Dave is like a puppy dog. Dave can do and get away with anything. So Dave's handing these people, and they're laughing. But then I look over, and there's a woman on a rascal holding a fistful of these phallic-shaped stickers, screaming at Dave. And I'm like, oh no, Dave gave out the dong stickers. And so we go over, and she's scolding him. She's offended. She can't believe that we would do this. And we were then asked to leave the LA Convention
rightfully so, I can imagine.
Everything would go so well.
So how far can
came to the show? We got
sure
audience members from that convention to come to our show. It was awesome.
So I imagine, first of all, with COVID, you must have had difficulties with booking Thunder Bulge, right? But where are you at with that now? Are you still going forward with it? How far can you take it? What are the aspirations you have for Thunder Bulge?
Oh man, so we during COVID we did some virtual stuff. We did a really fun virtual show that we partnered with a company called The Perfect Package. They make phallic-shaped gummies. We also had a wonderful sponsorship with the Emoji Baiter, which is an emoji-shaped personal massager, who I also did a commercial for. Long story, but no, so we got to do some virtual stuff. We did a couple virtual bachelorette parties, some virtual birthdays. And so that, to be honest, during the lockdown, it was super fun. People really wanted to cut loose. It was very much like a happy hour thing. We kind of treated it as a drinking game. But we really just, we did our thing, and we really just focused on letting and highlighting our audience and letting those people be seen and be heard and just be wild, in their own homes by themselves. And it turned into such a fun thing. But we had pre-COVID, we had just moved the show over to Rage nightclub in West Hollywood. It's an amazing stay. The West Side was great to us. We love the West Side Comedy Theater always. It was just time to punch up the show a bit. We needed a new audience. We wanted to start, trying to market it in a bigger way. And so West Hollywood made sense. It's a very nice, they have a very nice performance space, dedicated tech people, it's such a wonderful space. And so we did a show there, sold out. It was amazing. We were, really ready to take over West Hollywood by storm. And then COVID hit. And sadly, Rage has closed for good. However, it was recently purchased by Lance Bass of InSync. Lance, if you're listening, Thunder Bulge would very much like to come back and continue to perform at Rage.
And Lance, if you're listening, then you got to get a life apparently. But if you're listening, you give me a call and we'll get you on here too, and we'll promo the new venue.
He's on Cameo. We could reach out.
Yeah. So. I mean, let's assume that you can't rely on Lance to reopen for you or get you on there. What are you going to do with Thunder Bulge?
So right now, our main focus is we're trying to pitch the show in Las Vegas. It's an interesting process. There's no real playbook to creating an entire show and then a live show like that and selling it. It's so there's a lot of trial and error. But so right now we're speaking with different production companies and things like that to see about possibly putting up the show and moving it to Vegas and doing that full time.
So are you guys represented? Do you have management and agents and all that taking care of that for you?
We have some solid connections. You need
attorneys, things like that.
Yeah, we might need an attorney. Do you do booty short related injuries? I mean,
that's what I specialize in.
Okay, all right. Yeah. I did hurt my knee on stage once and was on crutches for a few months on Valentine's Day, so I should have reached out.
Well, and I want to squeeze a few more things in here I wanted to talk about, because you formed Rose Entertainment Group. Is that your baby?
Yes, that is my baby.
Okay, and is that named after our grandmother, or was that just a coincidence?
It is named after my fiance Roseanne, and it is named after our grandmother.
In that way, yeah. And I was going to ask about that. So you guys are. When is the wedding, by the way?
The wedding is 9/5. My invitations literally just got here today.
I was like, well, I haven't got mine yet. I'm just saying.
No, we did. We set out our save the dates last year, and then we had to postpone the wedding for a full year. After we just decided we're not going to do save the dates. We're just going to skip right to invitations, and so those should be coming in the U.S. mail to you probably in the next week. But planning a wedding while starting a business, doing virtual shows has been interesting.
So Rose Entertainment is, I think
Rose Entertainment Group.
Entertainment Group.
No.
Got you. That is to rep other acts. Is that correct?
Correct.
As an agent. Okay.
Yeah. So when I was working as tour manager for Mission Improvable, the company created a new educational show for colleges. It was called the C-Word Consent. It's a sexual assault prevention and awareness program. The idea is that the presenters use comedy to break through a wall and then have a really tough conversation with students. It's a really good program, and so their booking agency had a similar program, and so they didn't want to represent it. And there's a bunch of back and forth, and so I would always kind of lead the crew at the NACA conferences because I have sales experience, and I always kind of liked it. And so they were like, "All right, well, let's just do this in house. Let's see what Matt can do to market this program." And so I took it on, and I was really, really proud of the work we did. But I was able to take that show from script to product And I set a goal for myself, sales wise. And I was like, if I hit that goal, then I want to take a look at, becoming a booking
Doing
agent.
It yourself. Yeah.
Getting involved in that world. It's something that I've always liked and been interested in, once I got involved in that side of the business. And so I more than tripled my goal in the first year. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. So I stepped away from tour management to focus on that. And did some sales briefly for another company, and then it just became, and then COVID hit, and that kind of ended. So I was like, okay, this is now my time to create this company. And so I set another goal for myself. I was trying to figure out, in this COVID world, what you can do performance-wise, because, virtual shows aren't necessarily great.
Sure.
And, virtual improv, I understand a lot of people needed to do it, but you shouldn't have. No. But
that would be tough.
Yeah, and I was like, what works? And so trivia shows worked. I was like, you can do a trivia show. You can use, breakout rooms on Zoom, so you can still divide people into teams. They can all be seen and heard and throw in their 2 cents, like a pub trivia. And so I was like, okay, well, what if I do that instead? And so I created Laugh Out Loud Trivia presents the virtual college trivia tournament. And so I was watching these people that I knew, magicians, hypnotists, mentalists, things like that, comedians who would book out to colleges, usually between, probably around $2,500 a night, drastically lower their prices. But then, they only do one show for them. So my thought was, if I could offer trivia as a tournament package. So instead of selling you one show, I sell you a 4 to 8 week package. Your students get something to look forward to every week, some kind of sense of normalcy, routine in this weird world. And so they announced that they were going to hold NACA virtually. And so my business partner and I and some very close friends of ours created video promo for it. We submitted, we were awarded showcases at the virtual conferences. So we then showcased and marketed to students. So I set another goal for myself, and I was like, okay, if I can make enough money doing this to fund my agency for the first year, then I will move forward with opening Rose Entertainment Group.
Gotcha.
So I set out with that goal. I again exceeded my goal, and so I was like, okay, well, this is what I said I was going to do, so now I'm going to do it. So we created the agency. We have 12 different acts that we rep right now. Some really, really amazing artists, some amazing comedians. We've got a really amazing magician. I'm in the process of developing a hypnosis show, which is a whole another animal, but that's fun. But yeah, so we're really looking forward to it. NACA is going to be having in-person conferences this year. So yeah, we're really looking forward to hitting the ground running. We've got some really, really great artists, and yeah, so there's a lot going on. I was able to use this pandemic time productively, and while it's been hard, once again, I've found myself in that place where, all of the circumstances in my life have led me to the next thing. And so, here I am.
Well, good.
And I feel like the future is bright. And yeah, I'm just, again, very fortunate and very blessed to be able to continue to do what I do.
Well, and that's great, and I want to go over the future being bright and getting to where you've gotten and taking advantage of the time that you've had during the pandemic. Those are all things that I think come about, knowing your background and knowing by whom you were raised and the family that you were part of, and being a Midwestern boy, and we've interviewed a lot of folks from all over on this podcast. Many of whom are Midwesterners, and I think they have that, do or die kind of attitude, and they generally succeed because they've applied that. But one of the things that interests me when we talk about that kind of a success story is, who was it that influenced you? Who are or were your heroes that or your mentors, and what was it about those folks that kind of helped propel you?
Sure. Now you mean like people, like real life people, or like my heroes?
All of the above.
All
anybody
of the above.
Anybody who influenced you to get to the next step along the way as you've been progressing in this journey.
I kind of touched on it before, but I was really fortunate enough to have some really amazing teachers that Tom and Shelley Walljasper and they both still perform at Circa 21 in Rock Island. Took an interest in me at a young age and helped me. And then again my high school choir teacher, Dorothy McNamer, and Matt Walsh, who still is around in the Quad Cities. He was my drama teacher. Those teachers really, really helped me stay focused and get me to where I needed to go, And I really do think if it wouldn't have been for those really amazing teachers in my life
and great cousins
did I mention my yeah, but also my dad always, both my parents, I have amazing parents.
Sure.
My dad always supported, even though the theater world wasn't quite his thing. He was a truck driver turned ticket scalper broker. Sorry. But once he realized, I was doing what I loved, he went in full steam and supported me. My family and my teachers, I feel like that sounds cliche, but I mean, it really is true,
For sure.
And I think it's a testament to, the kind of teachers and the kind of people that you get in the Midwest. You're saying.
I agree. And so what's the movie of your life called, and who's going to play you?
The movie of my life. Oh, wow. I think it should probably be called The Movie of My Life. Matt Garard. Yeah, I said it. Getting Gerarded. Getting Gerarded. Yes.
Getting Gerarded.
That's a term.
I would have gone with Butter Thunder, but whatever works.
Yeah, no, I think it's Getting Gerarded, and if I was going to be played by anyone, Chaz Bono.
Okay.
I mean, there's no one who looks more like this than Chaz Bono. If you can find a side-by-side photo of Chaz Bono, it's uncanny.
Justin, we'll have to see if we find a Chaz Bono that we can put next to him if we see one that looks like him. I get it though. Yeah.
But as far as professionally, I'd say Bill Hicks. Bill Hicks, all-time favorite comedian. I discovered Bill Hicks because he's on a Tool album. When I was in 8th grade in Catholic school, and downloaded every word that man had ever said on Napster and just memorized it, and it just cracked me open.
Well, okay. So now mentioned some of the influences that you've had. What would be the best advice that you could give to a budding comedian / comic actor?
Oh man, the best advice that I could give is never stop working. You're never too good to work, but always work on yourself. Always be thinking about bettering yourself, even when you're in a bad situation. Whether you're bombing or whatever. Every experience is a learning experience. But also bet on yourself. Don't. There's a different path for everybody to do everything. But I remember traveling around teaching improv workshops to college students that are throwing away $75,000, $100,000 on a liberal arts degree. And, that's not going to get them anywhere. If you just bet on yourself, move to a big city, audition, just do it. Go, be broke, have a backup plan. Sure. If you want to get that college degree, get it in business. Something that's going to help you sustain yourself while you pursue what you love, and that was, God, I hate to keep bringing it back to teachers, but I had a professor in college when I was kind of at this impasse of, should I continue going to school or should I drop out and move to Chicago? He was like,
sure. He was
like, go drop out and move to Chicago. That's the best thing for you. You don't need an education. You're good or you're not. Go see what you can do. So yeah.
Okay. So now I want to play a little bit of Would You Rather.
All right.
Okay. And Is your bride to be near you right now? Did I hear you like looking or getting whispers
she walked
from her?
past.
Okay, well then she'll like this first one.
Oh man.
Would you rather be gassy on a first date or on your wedding night?
I mean, I would say first date because I was gassy on our first date, and you know what? I was like, I'm just gonna own this and see what happens. Yeah, that actually
she'll
did
appreciate
happen.
that. She's past that, so that's good. Hopefully,
you know what? If you can get past that on the first date, you've got a future.
That says something for sure. Okay, so would you rather have fortune or fame?
Fortune or fame?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so shallow. Fortune.
Okay.
Well, hang on. That's a tough question. I mean, fortune or fame? I like money.
It's one or the other. I mean, I know you can't. People always want to give me the hypothetical back and change it. Like,
right.
Well, yeah, but if I was famous, I could get the fortune. No, you're either famous and you have no fortune, or you're fortunate and you have no fame.
Screw that. Show me the money.
All right. Would you rather be an extra in an Oscar-winning movie or be the lead in a box office bomb?
Oh man, I take lead in box office bomb. I mean, you can wear that like a badge of honor,
sure.
No matter how bad it is. And there is, there's a certain point where it gets so bad it's good. I mean, look at the
That's
room.
True. True. That's true.
What's that guy's name? Tommy Wiseau. Oh wow.
Yeah, I was just talking again the other day with some friends about some movies. Some of them are intentionally campy, but some of them it just become cult. Favorites over the years, things like Motel Hell, or what was the other one? Oh, The Bad Seed. I mean, if you haven't seen those, you got to check those out. Those are amazing. So would you rather watch nothing but Hallmark Christmas movies or just horror movies?
Just horror movies.
Okay. I think that's a fair.
Yeah. I mean, because you get so much out of horror. I mean, there's horror, but there's comedy. So much goes into making something in that genre.
Sure.
But no, I love horror movies. Actually, my fiance can't stand them. It's a massive point of contention. I would watch stupid horror movies all day, every day if I could.
All right. Well, this will be an important one for her. Would you rather give up your cell phone for a month or bathing for a month?
Oh. I would have to give up my cell phone. I can't not. I
appreciate that.
Yeah. Oh, the thought of not bathing for 2 days terrifies me. Like,
it terrifies us around you too.
Right, as it should.
So thank you.
Like, and make no mistake, I am addicted to my phone. Not being on my phone during this podcast has been a struggle.
Right, I know.
I also have every used car salesman in California calling me right now.
Of course, yeah. Hey, your warranty is about to expire?
Right.
Yeah. Would you rather be the funniest person in the room or the smartest person in the room?
Oh, funniest person in the room.
Of course, right?
Yeah.
Now, the
funniest person in the room usually is the smartest person in the room.
That's often true. Now, this is the last one, so give it some thought. Would you rather have a mullet or a perm?
Oh, man. In 2021, right?
Right now.
Well, that's important.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I gotta go mullet because, again, the philosophy of business up front, party in the back is something that I really, really try to adhere to. I try to live my life.
That's a good enough reason.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, hey, buddy, I mean, I really appreciate you being on here. We're going to obviously have to have you back at some point to see how some of these things play out for you far as Rose Entertainment Group and everything else that you're doing. And I want to see you get that show up in Vegas and everything else doing so well. So thank you so much for being here, man.
Dennis, thank you so much for having me. I do have to say, I love that your sign off comes from your mother. It's a pretty amazing thing. I mean, obviously, your father too, but your mother having recently passed, just such an amazing woman that lived in so many people's lives. And I heard that on your first episode, like that's why you're doing that. And I was like, you know what, that's great. I appreciate that. Love me some Aunt Barb and Uncle Ken.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate that, and of course, I miss your dad, and it's always great to catch up. So
maybe next time we can do it in person.
I hope so. Absolutely. So everybody else out there, thank you for listening today. Don't forget, if you haven't already done so, be sure to subscribe to Uncommon Convos. Also, if you haven't done so already, check out Legal Squeaks, our other podcast. So you can learn about legal and consumer issues which may impact your daily life. Also, if you want to see the video version of this and our other episodes, and I assure you do, because you don't want to miss that promo about Thunder Bulge. So you can check that out at uncommonconvos.com. And then again, please join us next week. And in the meantime, have a great day. Stay safe. And as Matt will tell you, I love you all.